So, let's talk about the Great War. How did an entire continent, a world that seemed pretty stable, just erupt into a war that changed everything? We're going to dig into how one single gunshot could set the whole world on fire.
Listen to this. The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime. Wow. That's from Britain's Foreign Secretary back in 1914. It just perfectly sums up this feeling, right? This dread that 100 years of peace was over and something terrible was on the horizon.
Okay, so what was Europe even like before all this kicked off? Well, picture this. It was a continent totally caught in the middle. You've got these ancient empires and old-school monarchies on one side, but then, bubbling up, you have these powerful new ideas, nationalism, socialism, and they're shaking everything up. It created this super tense, incredibly explosive mix.
And this is where things get really crazy. You've got this continent that's basically wired to explode. A whole tangled web of alliances had split Europe into two giant armed camps, the Triple Entente and the Central Powers. What that meant was, if you attacked one country, you were basically attacking all of their friends too. It was like a giant house of cards just waiting for a breeze. And that wasn't even the whole story. On top of the alliances, you had this out-of-control arms race. I mean, every major power was pouring money into its military. Germany's building up its navy, trying to compete with Britain. France and Russia are building these massive armies. And the crazy part? They all thought this was making them safer, that it would prevent a war. But what it really did was guarantee that when war did come, it would be on a scale nobody had ever seen.
So, let's recap. You've got these tangled alliances, this insane arms race. Europe is basically a giant powder keg. All it's missing is a match.
And that match, it came from a group called the Black Hand. They were a Serbian nationalist group, and their main goal was to kick the Austro-Hungarians out of their territory. So they decided to make a statement, a huge one. They targeted the heir to the entire empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And they did it on a really symbolic day, a Serbian national holiday, during his visit to Sarajevo. And then, dominoes. The assassination on June 28th kicks off this insane chain reaction. Austria-Hungary gets Germany's backup and declares war on Serbia. But wait, Russia steps in to protect Serbia, so Germany declares war on Russia, and then on Russia's ally France. To get to France, Germany invades neutral Belgium, and that forces Britain to declare war on Germany. I mean, look at that timeline. In just over a month, the entire continent is at war. It's unbelievable.
You know, at the start, everyone thought this would be quick. The boys will be home by Christmas, that was the saying. Well, that idea just got completely shattered. This war quickly turned into something nobody had ever seen before. A horrific, industrial-sized meat grinder.
And this is really the central tragedy of the whole thing. You had generals stuck in the past using 19th century tactics, literally ordering guys on foot to charge across open fields. But they were charging into 20th century weapons. Think about it. A single machine gun could mow down hundreds of men in minutes. It was this perfect, terrible storm of old ideas and brutal new technology.
Okay, look at this number. 19,000. Just let that sink in. It's a number so big, it's hard to even wrap your head around. But what is it? What does it mean? That's how many British soldiers died on the first day of the Battle of the Somme. A single day. It was the single worst day in the history of the entire British Army. I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know about the kind of slaughter we're talking about. And if you managed to survive that, what was life like? Well, it was hell. Life in the trenches was just miserable. It was this endless cycle of mind-numbing boredom, broken up by moments of absolute terror. You dealing with mud, floods, diseases like trench foot, constantly under the threat of being blown to pieces by artillery. And then a whistle would blow, and you'd have to climb over the top and run straight into machine gun fire. It's just unimaginable. This war was really the birth of modern warfare as we know it. For the first time, you had submarines hunting ships in the ocean. You had airplanes fighting dogfights in the sky. You had the first tanks rumbling across no man's land. And you had the horror of chemical weapons like chlorine gas. After World War I, the way humans fight wars was changed forever.
But you know, this wasn't just a war between armies. This was a world-shaking event. It was a catastrophe that was about to bring ancient, centuries-old empires to their knees and totally redraw the map.
And when it was all over, 4 massive empires had just vanished. The Russian Empire collapsed into revolution. The Ottoman Empire, gone.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire dissolved, and the German Empire was replaced by a new government. I mean, the entire map of Europe and the Middle East was torn up and redrawn from scratch.
For years, the war was just this brutal, bloody stalemate. Neither side could get the upper hand. But then, in 1917, the game changed. The USA entered the war, bringing fresh soldiers and its incredible industrial might. That was it. That tipped the scales for good and gave the Allies the push they needed to finally win.
The human cost, when you really look at it, is just staggering. Over 17 million people died, not just soldiers, but civilians too. It's just hard to comprehend. They called it the lost generation, and for good reason.
And that's not even counting the wounded. More than 20 million others were injured, many of them with injuries that would change their lives forever. An entire generation of men came home carrying the physical and the mental scars of that war.
So, after 4 long, brutal years, it was finally over. But here's the thing. The peace that came next, it turned out to be almost as dangerous as the war itself.
At 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918, the guns finally went silent. The German Kaiser was gone, and the new government asked for peace. The Great War had ended.
But the peace treaty that followed, the famous Treaty of Versailles, was a disaster. Instead of being about healing and moving forward, it was all about punishment. Germany was forced to take all the blame, pay these insane amounts of money, and was basically left totally humiliated and broken.
And all that anger and humiliation, it created the perfect breeding ground for extremism. And there was one man who hated that treaty more than maybe anyone else. He would tap into all that resentment and ride it all the way to power, vowing to make Germany great again. And his name was Adolf Hitler.
So that leaves us with one last really chilling question, doesn't it? They called it the war to end all wars. But in trying to punish Germany so harshly, did the winners just light the fuse for an even bigger, even more terrible war just 20 years down the road?